What's the worst I hate to break it to you moment you had with someone? I used to work in a customer care call center for a major telecommunications company. A woman called in one day to inquire about two $99 charges on her bill from Lava Life. She kept pressing about the charges, what they were, and I had to explain to her that Lava Life is a dating service and that the charges were legitimate. If she didn't make them, did someone else live in her house who might have? There was only her husband, and I heard her go from, but he would never, to I have to go now as it set in. That was almost 20 years ago now and I still feel awful about it. Having to tell people that they are literally smelling so bad they are excused from work to go home to shower and put on clean clothes. Then they can come back to work. More than once. To the same people. Not me, but my ex a couple years ago got a job as a cook working at a big hospital. They had a mostly set and reoccurring cycle of dishes items in Golden Corral style stations around the cafeteria. Basic bitch food dressed up or pre-prepped. Nothing too fancy. His first month he became familiar with some of the residents' doctors who would make small talk and shoot the shit with him as he loaded up their plates. One of these doctors was a man originally from India who was very enthusiastic about the country fried chicken smothered in pepper gravy. He said it was his favorite dish out of anything else there, and it wasn't uncommon for him to stop by at the end of his shift to purchase extra to take home. My partner's first time working the entree station, the doctor pointed and asked my partner for his usual country fried chicken. My partner stared at him confused. They didn't serve country fried chicken. But they do have chicken fried steak. When he nonchalantly informed the doctor of this, the man's eyes went wide. He looked genuinely shocked. This isn't chicken. My partner described the expression on his face as going from jarred and baffled to so sad when he realized he had been eating beef this entire time. But also that it had tasted so delicious. Apparently, despite eating other types of meat, the man was still deeply tied to his Hindu roots and avoided beef in his regular diet because of this. The previous cook before him had mistaken these ambiguous meat patties smothered in thick gravy for chicken, so wires got crossed and he then relayed that incorrect information to the doctor. I still cringe when I think about this. X felt so sad he had to be the one to tell him. I had a guy working for me that was extremely nice, easy to get along with, and wildly inept. Not even like low effort, but just not capable of learning seemingly basic tasks. We tried everything. Coaching, giving him legitimate checklist instructions, having a team lead sit with him for a couple weeks to walk him through basics, everything. Everyone said the same thing. He just couldn't do the job. Everything he did had to be double checked by somebody else, which meant that we might as well have somebody else do it. But everyone liked the guy. They thought he was easygoing and cool to be around, everything. But still he just straight up couldn't do that job. So I had to find another place for him in the company that would better match his skills. The option would be for him to either take the lower job with lower pay, or he would be fired, with severance. I was not looking forward to the conversation. I called him in for a 1-1 to break it to him, and the first thing he started with was, "Hey boss, before we start I just want to tell you that I really feel like I've been doing a great job here and I would like to talk about a raise." Yeah, that conversation was not a fun one. Having to tell a student who was almost totally blind that she likely couldn't be an ER nurse. She and her dad moved to our district, and at the IEP, her dad starts talking about how he can't wait for Sue to go to nursing school. I frantically scanned my brain, trying to think of how someone who was going to need Braille would be able to do that job. Then Sue piped up to say that her dream was to be an ER nurse. Her prior district told her she could do anything, including this. She had a degenerative disease that would eventually make her blind. I talked to my friends who are nurses, I talked to our career lady at the school, I researched, but there just wasn't any way someone who couldn't see could be an ER nurse. I reconvened the IEP and had to explain this. I know both were in denial, but I was not happy that the prior district pumped up this idea. I mean, sure, there is lots she could still do, but that just wasn't one of them. Then another student came from the same district with the idea she could be a CSI investigator. She was also nearly blind. I had to tell my friend that the online girlfriend he'd been talking to for months was actually a scammer using stolen photos. He was planning to send her money to come visit, and breaking the news to him was one of the toughest conversations I've ever had. So my friend had a similar thing going on. Claimed to have talked a bunch on the phone, and we didn't really believe him. Eventually, she asked for money for a ticket, and we were all like, there it is. And he finally believed us. He decided to put it to the test, to prove it once and for all, and told her that he'd bought her a ticket for the flight, assuming she'd make up an excuse to get out of it. He didn't really buy the ticket, assuming he was just calling out the catfisher. Well, to his surprise, the day of, he got a call from her, at the airport, panicking because they couldn't find the ticket. He managed to play it off as a mistake, and was able to get her on the flight. She really was the big titty goth girl from the photos. They dated for 5 years and she came out every summer for like 5 years before they grew apart. There was a rule at my job where only one of these two supervisors could be off at a time. One of them loved to take a full week off work during holidays, to get more bang for his PTO buck. One year, he had Thanksgiving week off, but the other supervisor had family come to town that week on late notice. The other supervisor asked him to cancel just one of his days so she could spend the day with family. He declined, even after she basically begged him, and he even said he didn't have anything to do that day. She then proceeded to take PTO days every Wednesday of a holiday week for the next calendar year, effectively blocking him from taking his cheap weeks off. He told me that he thought it was funny because he knew she didn't have enough time to take all those vacation days off, and she'd eventually have to cancel some of them. I got to tell him, I hate to break it to you, but she only took 2 hours off each of those days. See, the rule didn't differentiate between a partial or whole day, so she only had to burn 24 or so hours to block him. He looked devastated. It was kind of petty on both of their parts, but I give her credit for being creative in her attribution and don't blame her a bit for what she did. Oof, definitely the time I had to tell a friend that the business opportunity he was so excited about was actually a pyramid scheme. He was so hyped, talking about how he was going to quit his job and be his own boss. I tried to ease into it, but there's really no soft way to say, hey man, you're about to lose a lot of money and ruin your friendships. My best friend in high school was overweight and would sweat profusely. We would come in after lunch in Texas and he would smell awful. I think he would wear his clothes without washing them after sweating. We had English after and the AskReddit teacher put a fan in the window. He would sit in front of the fan and blow his funk over everyone. The class got together and voted that I should be the one to tell him. Well, I had to break it to him that for the last year he has smelled horribly. I felt pretty bad, but he never stunk again. Sister's a victim of her own impulsivity. She really likes new cars, and will roll negative equity into a new car. Then she'll get bored of it, stop maintaining it, trade it in for a loss, and have an even bigger loan. And this was back when loans were pretty much free, and they could finance anybody. So she called me up all excited because she found a new truck, got approved for financing, and was on the way to go buy it. So I went to meet her there, big V8 full-size pickup truck. For a woman working part-time and living in a congested city. Why do you want this? My kids need a place to transport their bikes. And I want to go camping, so I test drove it with her. Salesman was doing everything in his power to make the sale, and fair enough, he's not a financial advisor, he doesn't need to deal with the fallout. But right there in the showroom, I had to tell her that, look, this is an awful idea, you can't afford this. It's going to be a huge burden on you, and you need to walk away. Thankfully, she did. Salesman would have punched me if he could have gotten away with it, he was seething mad. Freshman year of college, a friend said that he was going to go barefoot as much as possible to toughen up his feet so that his future kids would be born with tough feet too. Had to explain to him why that wouldn't work and the basics of genetics. He didn't believe me and stuck with his theory. We have since lost touch, but I know he had a son a few years ago. I'll have to ask him if it worked out. My superior, a bank VP, told me to fire my subordinate because he's always snapping his fingers when he walks, And he knows it drives everybody crazy. She said if I don't do it, she'll fire both of us. This was decades ago. Laws were mere suggestions then. I took him to lunch and let him pick the restaurant. After eating, as we were pushing our empty plates to the center of the table, I just blurted out, "Ken, yeah, fired. Yeah, I know. Is it about the snapping thing? Yeah. You knew this was coming? Yeah." I told them my ankle pops for a few steps if I sit still for a while, he says. He gets up and walks around the table, and I can hear this loud pop pop pop. I told him, "I guess she doesn't believe you." He smiled and said it was okay. He'd already accepted an offer somewhere else, and he knew this was coming. A couple of years later, Ken's boss reached out and headhunted me, and Ken and I got to work together for a few years. Great guy. Loud ankles. About a decade ago, I was having dinner with friends and we were all sharing crazy partying stories. One friend said that a few weeks before that, she witnessed a drunk girl chasing her crush around, frantically trying to kiss him or grope him. The poor guy kept telling her to stop, but she wouldn't have it. Some of the drunk girl's friends even joined in. They tried to undress the guy and would not let him leave. Eventually, the guy managed to escape and ran back to his car. My friend was telling that story as if we were supposed to laugh, but at one point, we gently broke it down to her that she had witnessed attempted rape and the fact that the victim was a man was not an excuse. My friend's face changed as the horror of what she had seen dawned on her. I had an upper management type guy try to explain to me, in a very condescending way, how a specific device works and how to install it. All completely wrong. I wrote the manual for it. I own the patent. It's named after me. My friend has been constantly complaining about her husband. I visited them for a couple of weeks and I had to break to her that she is the problem, like massively so. I genuinely felt sorry for her husband by the time I left. The man gets both verbally and emotionally abused constantly. I told him he should report her to the police if she ever hit him again, cause honestly, the situation is completely out of control. Even more out of control than she is. She needs a couple nights in jail to rethink her choices, TBH. Not me, but I was there for it. After a family wedding, my dad and some of his cousins he hadn't seen in years were at my parents' home drinking beers and catching up. As they were laughing about an old story from being kids, my dad asked one of the cousins how his little brother is doing, cause they hadn't talked in a few years. The room got so dead silent instantaneously that we could tell something was very off. The cousin he asked about with the brother got choked up and another cousin awkwardly told my dad that the brother had died the year prior. Turns out my entire family was aware and had all gone to the memorial and been notified. My grandma somehow failed to realize nobody had informed my parents, so it was literally only my family that had no clue. Nobody even really shared about it on social media, so it was just a complete shock to us. Not me, but I went to visit my dad at his job and he has an employee there who was kind of bragging to his other co-workers about how well he has been doing at the job and thinking of asking for promotion. My dad later told me that he fired that guy later that day due to poor performance despite multiple attempts to help him. Lol. We have a guy like this at work. We do utility construction, and I was working with just him, and the foreman was down the highway giving out work over the radio, and this guy, despite me showing him repeatedly over the previous week, cannot remember how to do the simplest tasks. He's basically only good for unloading materials and bringing you tools. Even then, he's either complaining or bragging about how he's going to be a machine operator in no time. Our foreman has 40 years of experience and he's been in this sector of the company for about 6 months, and he will try and argue with him when he tells us how we're going to get something done as if he somehow knows how to do it better. I got so tired of hearing it that I just leveled with him and told him that if he keeps it up, he's going to be lucky if they don't fire him, and that he needs to stop complaining and get good at the labor aspects of the job he has before anyone would ever think of training him to run any machines. 15 years ago, my friend's father sadly passed away shortly after we graduated college. It was devastating for him. He figured he'd at least get a nice money boost to help him get back on his feet, but unfortunately, his father kept it a secret that he was deep in debt and had no liquid cash to his name. My friend had no support and fell into a terrible depression. He was broke. He couch crashed with me and our friends for a while. He quit his job. And he got comfortable with this new lifestyle. 2 years later, he's still spending a month here and there with various friends around the city, eating their food, occupying their couch, sipping off their booze cabinet, using the terrible tragic passing of his father as his reasoning for being the way he was. It had been 2 years. We understood the pain he felt was real, but it was really time for him to actually get back on his feet and taking care of himself. We didn't know how to explain it to him, but we all felt he was taking advantage of us, and was using his father's death as an excuse to just not get a job. I found him a job. A nice one. One he would be good at, he went to school for, and didn't need prior work experience. I talked to a team lead and an hour rep, and got him a contact line for them, basically assuring an interview and a job offer if he arrived on time and sober. Weeks later, my HR rep and this team lead were confused, thinking I didn't relay the information to him. He never called. I gave him a layup of a job opportunity and he just ignored it outright. I called him out on it, but he told me to calm down and chill out, and that I wasn't being sensitive to his depression, and I wasn't understanding of his needs. So my worst I hate to break it to you moment wasn't actually with him. It was with all my friends afterward. I had to tell them all to turn him down every time he asked to stay a week at their place. It sucked. The timing and my response to his refusal would give it away. This guy knew I was the horrible jerk who turned all his friends against him and denied him free room and board. Hell, I was probably going to be the sole reason he'd blame for his inevitable descent into homelessness. I accepted the burden and called them up, explaining I had a job lined up for him and he refused, and we must all stop giving him a free place to stay if he won't take an easy job. Yes, it sucks his dad died. And it sucks he didn't get any kind of inheritance to start his life proper. It sucks he felt this terrible depression that lingered for years, and most of all, it sucks he had a group of enabling friends like me who humored it for so long it just became his accepted norm. We failed him. He didn't end up homeless, though. Without us offering his jobless but a couch to crash on anymore, he ended up moving in with his aunt. Apparently she didn't take his excuses, didn't put up with his laziness, and did all the things we should have been doing all along. No booze allowed. No weed up. No gaming after she went to bed. She only had one TV in the house and it was for Food Network only. He got a job developing 3D assets for VR titles, and started moving up and up creating VR experiences for architecture companies. Dude still hates me probably, and I'll admit I made mistakes to justify it. But I'm really grateful his aunt was there. I did what I needed to do, but it would have been even 10 times worse if he did end up living on the streets, still blaming his father's sudden death for his 2-decade-long predicament. I was traveling for work in Australia. Let's say I was commuting between Perth and Sydney and back again. The back again flight was at stupid o'clock, requiring me to get up at 3 AM to leave at 4 AM to be at the airport by 5 AM. I was groggy and moving on autopilot. I stopped to buy a coffee at an airport kiosk and the barista asked me, "Where are you flying to today?" I sleepily replied to Sydney and the guy looked stunned. He said, "I hate to break it to you, but you are in Sydney." I was at a tech entrepreneurial meetup back in 2012. I spoke with one guy who was enthusiastically describing his billion-dollar idea, an app that people at the gym could use to track their workouts and do challenges. He said there was even a social media potential because people could share their progress. "You mean like Strava?" I asked, thinking he had perhaps identified a niche market not covered by Strava, Endomondo, and others. I got a confused what in response. He'd never heard of it. The look on his face when I showed him the app and he saw that his idea had been thoroughly realized for some time was tragic. How he had gotten as far with his idea as he had without finding any existing apps is a mystery to me. A friend of mine unironically thought that he was the first person ever to experience existentialism. He literally said that no one ever talks about how small we are in the grand scope of the universe and kept saying that no one else ever wants to talk about the meaning of life. I felt too bad to explain to him that the concept of how small we are in relation to our world has literally been one of the backbones of philosophy for centuries. Related to that, I've had to explain to people that this is why when you start philosophy in university, it is nothing but reading what other, usually very old, philosophers wrote and then writing a paper to explain their views, to prove you understand them, because none of the amazing ideas you had are new. No, not even that one. You need to learn about all the fundamental shit that people have already come up with, the responses to it, the responses to that, etc. so that you aren't continually reinventing the wheel. You can't get to any of the cutting edge philosophy until you understand enough to stop reinventing Pascal's wager and so on. I lived in a shared flat in 2012. Me, F, another woman and a guy. I came home from work at about 6 PM and heard an unmistakable sound coming from the guy's bedroom. No matter how much I convinced myself it could be something else, I knew it was the sound of spanking coming from his room. I'm pretty liberal, but it feels uncomfortable listening to that when you just want to unwind from work and have your dinner. My female flatmate was very conservative and came to me saying she'd regularly heard the spanking. It was freaking her out, and I needed to deal with it. Why should I deal with it? Deal with it I did. I cornered Spanky Man flatmate in the kitchen and I said boldly, "This is rather awkward, but I need to talk to you about the loud spanking in your bedroom." He replied with the immortal line, "Oh. That, well, it's not what you think it is. I'm not spanking women in there. They're spanking me. Oh, that's okay then, right? Sorry to have bothered you." A week or two before my sister's wedding, our uncle was hospitalized. When she had visited him, he said something about hoping to get released before the wedding so that he could attend. He didn't, and while she was on her honeymoon he had passed away in the hospital. When she got back she called from the airport to have us pick her and her husband up. Since I was the one that answered the phone, I had to tell her that he had passed away. Not a fun situation. I was at a big music festival, having a drink with some kind babes. One of them mentioned how it's so thoughtful that all the porta potties have purse holders so you can get yourself organized. The guys looked at each other and a quick thinking guy asked her to describe what the purse holders looked like, thinking that maybe as dudes we didn't notice them. She described the purse holder. All the other dudes just side-eyed each other until I had the courage to say, "I hate to be the one to break this to you, but you've been setting your purse down in a urinal for days." Wrote this as a reply to another comment, but thought it works on its own, too. I went out to have a few drinks and play some pool with a good, but not super close friend. Literally as we're walking in the door he stops me and says, "Sally is here with Harry, don't tell Tom, her BF, name's changed." Tom was, and 20 years later still is, one of my best friends, and this guy thought I'd just be like, "Yeah, no probs, I'll lie to him about this." We walk in and she's sitting on this other guy's lap. I play it cool and chat for a few minutes, then say I'm running over the road to get some smokes. Go straight to payphone, like I said, 20 plus years ago, and call Tom, who jumps in his car and speeds over. The look on all their faces when he walked in was hilarious. No major fights or anything. Tom has always had a lot of self-confidence, so he was just like your loss and walked away from a 3-4 year relationship on the spot. It also really cemented our friendship, so silver linings and all that. I work in a smaller airport. It's pretty normal for someone to come in and hang around the lobby. However, sometimes they are still around after the last flight leaves. They'll ask when the flight to is expected, to which you reply that we don't have flights there. They start to look worried, then denial kicks in. That can't be right. My friend said they were flying into this airport today, so you dig a little deeper. Are you certain they didn't actually mean yes, yes? This is the boarding pass they sent me a picture of. They show you a picture of a forged pass. They'll explain that they've been chatting with so and so for months and often sending money. Most of these people are older men and women who are looking for someone they can connect with, only to get scammed out of their only savings. I lived with the roommates and we got a new sublet of some guy they all knew. The guy's girlfriend of 5 years wanted to take a break. Everybody in the house said she had clearly wanted to dump him for a while. The guy moved in and I become friends with him. He definitely thought they were getting back together, but he got depressed and drank a lot. One night he tells the housemates and I that he cheated on her a few times and even slept with his ex-GF on and off the first year they dated. Yikes. She, his new ex, was an absolute bombshell, could have easily been a model. The kind of face you could just stare at, unreal looking. But she was a total little Miss Princess. Real self-centered type. But a lot of fun to party with. She still hung around with the overall group of friends and my roommates. One night everybody was drinking together when her ex wasn't around. Somebody brought up cheating and she started laughing. Someone was curious why she found it funny. Oh, it's just not something I have to worry about. I'm too attractive. Nobody would cheat on me.